Okay, so if you had evidence, and presumably given your security services, your intel services, you would, that NATO, the US, CIA, the West did this, why wouldn't you present it and win a propaganda victory?
In the war of propaganda, it is very difficult to defeat the United States, because the United States controls all the world's media and many European media. The ultimate beneficiary of the biggest European media are American financial institutions. Don't you know that? So it is possible to get involved in this work, but it is cost prohibitive, so to speak. We can simply shine the spotlight on our sources of information, and we will not achieve results. It is clear to the whole world what happened, and even American analysts talk about it directly.
See, there are many things that motivate people, but there is none that is as powerful as fear. And nothing generates fear more than an overwhelming idea of a life-threatening crisis, even if that crisis isn't even real. But if you can create a crisis and get people to believe there's a crisis, you can get them to move quickly.
Our space program today even has some really interesting rituals associated with it when it does certain launches at Cape Canaveral. Maybe not all of them, but the one that Tyler was involved with, they had images of Roman gods and goddesses put on the rockets. They would use Latin on their patches, their mission patches, and they would also have specific rituals that they would do, sometimes involving U.S. presidents. They would position the presidents at a certain point where astronomical events, would happen. And this, so
like
Tyler had,
like the president of the United States.
Yes, the president of the United States. They didn't know what they were doing. They were just being positioned there. So they're like, stand here, Mr. Obama or President Obama, and he would stand there with his wife and look this direction. It was part of the whole thing, and there were photos. He has photos of all of that.
I mean, can you be a little more specific? Why would they stand him in a
Well,
certain...
see, okay, so this is obviously some type of ritual, and I don't know why they're doing it. I just know that, I'm a scholar of religion. I know a ritual when I see one. He didn't even understand it. So I noticed that they were using Latin, and I noticed it wasn't medieval Latin. I was like, this is a particular form of Latin. It seems like it's Roman theology. So, they're using the images of Roman gods. And I would ask him, I said, why are you using the images of Roman gods? Why are you putting them on your mission patches and also utilizing Latin phrases from that time period? I mean, you're sending it up into space. Who up in space is going to read Latin? And his answer was, our sponsors. So, that's what he said. And so he also had
Which Roman gods, do you know?
Yeah, so there would be obviously Apollo, right? So all the missions, if you think of all the missions, they're all those gods and goddesses.
And as they look into the future, they're saying, we have to not only shape and form the world, but we need to save it from itself. There is a messianic complex here. And when he uses this word powerful delusion, the word powerful, or anakia in the Greek, literally is only used in the New Testament in one way: supernatural power. Supernatural power. There's a demonic force that is convincing them and is deluding them. And I love even the word delude. It's more than just being deceived. It's the belief that you maintain despite contradictions of the real world all around you, even though it contradicts rational arguments. And we sit back and you and I will say, well, how in the world are they going to convince the rest of us to sign on to this whole concept if it's irrational and we can just look at the reality of it and say, this doesn't make any sense. Again, in terms of the bigger picture that I try to paint, the establishment of one world government, one world economy, and one world religion, as I said before, up until this present time, the idea of this universally and literally being fulfilled seemed impossible, and that led a lot of people to symbolic interpretations. But today, as I said again and again, these things are very much in play. And you find it really being part of the conversation, not only from lightweights like a John Lennon, who asked us to imagine a world where there was no heaven, no religion, no countries, no possessions, and the world would all live as one. Or Carlos Santana, who simply predicted that one day there will be no borders, no boundaries, no flags, no countries, and the only passport will be your heart. Wow. That we're coming to the dawning of the age of Aquarius, and that suddenly humanity is going to experience its unity as we all fall in love with each other and don't realize that our feet still stink. But you understand, aside from that kind of popular culture that sings the songs and tells the story and dreams the dreams, there are extremely powerful men and even families who have been working earnestly, investing deeply in this for a very long time. Whether we're talking about the Rockefellers or the Morgans or the Rothschilds who crafted our Federal Reserve System, which, whether you realize it or not, was a way for them to control both national and international economies, which was really their biggest desire by being able to control the flow of money and flow the interest rates. But more recently, it's included people like presidents, the Bushes or the Clintons or Jimmy Carter and even more so Barack Obama. And many political elites, whether it be Kofi Annan of the United Nations or Al Gore or Mikhail Gorbachev, or most interestingly Zbigniew Brzezinski, who it seems like many people have forgotten who he is. But Zbigniew was a counselor to Lyndon Johnson. He was a national security advisor to Jimmy Carter, and he was the co-founder with David Rockefeller of the Trilateral Commission. And we'll be talking in further studies about why those kind of organizations are significant. But you see, he was a very powerful intellectual influence upon the idea of a globalistic movement, not just in our own country, but internationally. And he famously said, the nation state, the idea that America is its own independent nation with its own borders and so forth, the nation state has ceased to be the principal creative force. International banks and multinational corporations are acting and planning in terms that are far in advance of the political concepts of the nation states. In short, what he was simply saying is the idea of individual nations separated by borders and currencies and so forth is done. It's just really a matter of, folding the tent. We're far past that. As Edith Kermit Roosevelt, who was the granddaughter of Teddy Roosevelt, explained, he says, these men have no national loyalties. Their ideology, if you will, she says, quote, one world socialist state governed by experts like themselves. Power elites in international finance, business, and professions and government who wield most of the power regardless of who is in the White House, affecting the nation's policy in almost every area. In other words, as Patrick Wood puts it, it's a government run by technocrats, people who are in love with systems and organizations, and they love computer technology and its ability to sort and sift and to control the dynamics of the world. It's interesting because I find it fascinating because Donald Trump is like their worst nightmare. Can I be really crude about it? I'll put it, my description of Donald Trump, he's a guy who was invited to the pool party and he took a dump in your pool. They're really upset. They're really upset. And I mean, whether you like the guy or not, he's really has thrown them into a dither.